Hey guys, this is Swats and welcome to Swats Tools. Today, I'm gonna explain how did I make my latest project, It's an Apple. Since I didn't record anything while I was working on the project, this will be more like a walkthrough of the whole process I went through from concept to final out. I'll be explaining my planning, my workflows, and my thought process that was behind every step of the way. My first idea was to make a look development of an app procedurally, that is, completely make the textures and shaders only using inbuilt Maya nodes like fractals and noises. I've done this before once in my studio as part of a training, so I wanted to do it again, more realistic this time. The first thing I always do before starting anything is to collect references, and my plan was only to do the look dev, so I was more focused only on collecting good texture references. But I knew that only with the look dev the art will be feeling unfinished. So, as look dev and lighting go hand in hand, I knew I'll have to place it under a good lighting for it to have a finished look. And in the time I was searching for references, I got this beautiful photograph of the apple. Its composition and lighting was so beautiful that I wanted to create that lighting and more in my project. I plan lighting in this stage of the process. I start reading the light from the photograph from the initial state itself. As you can see in the reference, the lighting direction is from the top and a little bit to the backside of the apple. At a single glance, we may feel like it's only used a single spotlight, but if you look closely to the apple's shadow, you can see there's a really dark shadow near to the bottom of the apple and another light and elongated shadow coming towards the camera. So the light that creates the darker shadow is the brightest light in the composition, and it's placed right above the apple, giving the specular highlights on top of the apple. The second light is giving the elongated shadow, indicating that the light is placed further behind the apple and it's giving those nice highlights and bokehs behind the apple on the water drops. And as always, there will be some amount of light from the environment. If you look at the image, you can see that the frame is so tight and the apple is covering almost half of the composition. We can see the top of the apple till the end of its back side, so the camera position will be slightly upper to the apple. Also, there is a very shallow depth of field in the photograph. Only a small part of the apple is in focus, so we can assume that the photographer has used a telephoto lens with focal length more than 85 mm. Also, a wide aperture of f2.8 or below may have used, but it may not be necessary to use a wider aperture as telephoto lenses tend to give shallow depth of fields on a higher focal length. As I was planning to add the depth of field in the post-processing, I wasn't concerned about the aperture. I was only concerned about the camera focal length. I planned to download a free model of Apple from the internet. The second thing was to model the water drops. Since the whole composition is filled with it, I had a Python script to generate water drops on meshes, which I got from the internet before for another one of my projects. I decided to go with the script just to make the water drop meshes and use Mesh instance plugin in Maya to populate the mesh onto the apple and to the ground. Since Mesh uses instancing, it will use really less memory and my viewport will be light. It can also be used to create the water drops on the air. For the ground, I can use a simple plane. So guys, this was my starting point. I set up a basic scene with the simple camera and the main object and a simple plane with chrome board, mirror board and a simple HDRI. So I downloaded this Apple from 3drender.com from the Fruit Bowl challenge. You can download many more objects 3D files from this site, and you can get different extensions if you are using softwares other than Maya. So that's our main model, and if I come to perspective, you can see I set up my camera a little top to the apple, and the focal length I set it up to 50 mm for the start. I always set up my file according to the reference image. So I loaded the reference image into the image plane and I set it up a basic setup like this. This is how I usually set up my scene.
for the beginning, I set up my layout and composition by creating the image plane and calling the reference image to the image plane and setting up the model exactly matching to the reference. So that's that. And now I'm going to show you how I set up the water drops on for my Mash instance. So I downloaded this Maya water drop generator from this site, lesterbanks.com. So if you can see, there's a tutorial on how to do this on this site, and there is a link for the script to download. So I've already set the script copied and onto the Python here, Python tag. If I Control A, it will select the whole script, and then I can execute by clicking here, the execute button, or just clicking Control Enter on keyboard. So I'm executing the script now. Now we get this water droplet generator window, and on the base object we can select the apple and click on select, so the surface gets selected. And here we can adjust the settings on density, minimum size, maximum size. We can create variations on the water drop sizes, and the density creates how dense the population will be on the surface. So you can adjust the settings and just click on make it rain. So it will start creating these meshes on the selected surface. As you can see, it's create variation on size and rotation, positions, and everything by default. So now it's finished. If you see, there's a group called water drops on the outliner, and it has around 249 meshes. So if we are to use polygon meshes on ground and apple, the scene will get heavy. And also, if you want controls on variations, you'll have to delete the old one and create new one every time we want to make a change. So this is more of a headache thing for experimenting. So that's why I decided to go for Mash. So I've only used some of these meshes from this just to create instances for Mash. Now that we have created the instance meshes from the script, I've selected 4 of them and I've moved into the center of the grid and rotated it to the normal. If you can go to a orthographic view, you can see I've corrected its rotations and positions and almost made all of them onto a same scale. And then I've put all of these pivot points a little inside of the mesh, so that when we are instancing on it on the surface, we won't be seeing these edges above the surface which we are instancing. So let's create mesh network from this. To create a mesh network, select the 4 of the mesh we want to instance, and then go to animation, mesh, create mesh network. Go to these options by clicking on the square. So make sure you are clicking on instancer, not the mesh, and create a name for this, and just click on apply and close. So now we have created a mesh network and a mesh instancer. On the instancer, we can see we have added 4 of the water drop meshes onto it. We can by default create a blank mesh network also, like this, and then we can add instancer into it by selecting each of them, and then the instance, then click on add selection, so it will get selected into it. So our instancer is ready. Here we adjust the settings of the mesh network. By default, we can see the instancer is creating 4 copies or instances, and the distribution type is variable. So if we increase this, we can see it's creating the instance as a circle. And if we change the distribution type to linear, the instancing changes into a line. So what we need is to instance these meshes onto the surface of the apple. So for that, we change the distribution type to mesh, and we have to connect an input mesh on which the instancing will happen. In our case, it's apple. So if we middle mouse click and drag and drop it on input mesh, the apple gets connected to the water drops mesh, and the instancing will happen on top of the apple. So we can increase the number to see more of it. We can change some of its settings according to our needs. So if you think that the size of the mesh is small or big, we can always go to the actual meshes and scale it up. So according to its scale, the scale of the instancer will change. And also, if you see, we have selected 4 of the water drop meshes, but only 1 of them is getting instanced here. That's because by default, the mesh is only instancing the first copy of from the instancer, that is water drop 13. So in order to read all 4 of them, we have to add an ID node to the mesh. If we come to the mesh tab, create an ID node. So the ID is created, and we have to select random so that it will randomly take any one from the 4. And then the ID count is taken by default by 4 because we have given 4 of the meshes here, and we can change the random seed so that, as you can see, the selection changes and the position remains the same, but the selection changes. So we can play along with it. And then, as you can see, as the number of the points increases, there's a chance of instances getting interacted or overlapping. So what I've done in my case was created a placer node and used move, rotate, scale options to select this one and move it a little bit. So there will be other options like giving a map and options to collide. I didn't see any of those, or I didn't experiment with any of these things, because the way I used was I created different mesh networks for different sizes of water drops, like small, medium, big, and I've controlled the automatic distribution. Then I used placer node to manually place things like this. according to my need, like where I feel it's more and where I feel it's needed, like that. Also on the placer node also you can select the ID to be random and then add the number to how many instances we have, so that it will create one node, randomly select one and create the mesh instances here. So this is how you create a mesh network, and this was the one of the problem I faced in my when I was creating instances. Some of the IDs were not coming proper along the node. So in this case, what I've done was selecting those and manually adjusting the rotation. So I know this is not the proper way, but I was kind of liking that I get to do this one by one. I'm kind of a lazy person and I like doing things that feels like a time pass. So I wasn't really getting bored while I was doing this. I did like more than 100 one manually, placing them, positioning them and rotating them. It was fun actually. So that's how you start creating instancing on Mesh. So this is my final layout file with all the instancing I've done. So you can see a bunch of different Mesh instancing used here. If you see my layout, it has changed quite a bit. The ground is bigger, and what I've done here for the ground, as you can see, the ground is bigger than the instancing, and the instancing is happening only on some part of the ground. So what I've done for that was duplicated this mesh and only used this much of the ground and deleted all the other faces from it and used that mesh for the mesh instancing. So I guess I'll get, yeah, this is the mesh. Right. Okay. So this was the mesh I've used for mesh instancing. So I've done this quite a lot of cut polygon tool because I was using instancing on points. So I was creating random points, vertex points, so that we won't be feeling like the mesh is instanced in a row and columns like that. So in order to avoid that, I used cut polygon tool and created a lot of random points here and there. And this I've only used for instancing. The actual mesh that I've used for rendering is really clean. So if you can see, let me hide all the ground and air instances. I've used some of the meshes for bigger water drops on the ground. I've placed it manually according to the composition. And if you see the apple, you can see there are different kinds of meshes instancing I've used like small, medium size, and then bigger, larger water drops. So if you see the instances, I've used 3 mesh instances for Apple Surface water drops, and you can see I've used different sized instances here, same meshes on different size variations for these instances. You see here I've used 8 instances, and these are like on different size variations. I've used different size variations on small, mid, and big. So if I let me hide this big one, so that those are the big, those are the medium, these are the small instances. So these are the variations I've done. And for the overlapping meshes, I've used placer nodes here for manually placing and removing, moving, for everything on the surface. So same as the Apple drops, I have created airdrops. For airdrops, as it's in the air, I've used 6 different airdrops here. That is too on different size variations. You can see here there are different sizes, and if you see, I've used N guns, that is polygon primitives, is platonic solid, I guess, or soccer ball. I've used these things for water drops just to get those size variations, and I can get speculars, different kind of speculars on this. I was hoping to get specular variations with these kind of variation in forms. So for airdrops, I've used volume distribution type, so that it creates instances in a volume. So if I small airdrops, okay, if I move it to the side, you can see this one is on the shape of a sphere. If I change it to cube, it will change the size into a cube. Okay. Maybe this one is okay, got it. You see, changes its volume shape. So that's how I have created all these water drop meshes. And for the size variations, I've used different size like the water drops, and that's it. There's nothing more on water drop meshes. And for the ground,
I've also created 3 variations only for the sizes, just different sizes. And in here, if you see the actual image, almost all the water drops are on autofocus, so I didn't think I would need to be concerned about the overlapping on ground water drops, because we are not gonna see those small overlapping details or anything. It's almost dark and almost on autofocus, so I wasn't really concerned about all the overlapping. It's happening already, but it won't be really visible. So that's the final mesh layout.
So before winding up, there are 2 more things I want to show you which I have missed on the earlier sessions. The first one is the shape of the water drops. These are the water drops we get by default from the script, which is open on the bottom side, and on the shader level it wasn't working for me. I had to close it. So the water drops I have used on the final layout is closed ones. Let me just assign a okay to you. I just closed it for the shader to work better. So that's one thing. And the second thing was the final camera focal length. And for the final camera, I have used 300 as a focal length, and yeah. So if you see the final mesh layout, the water drops are very long in structure. The ground is very long, and if you see through the camera, you won't feel it like it's a very long structure. So when I'm using the bigger focal length, all the water drops comes as comes very near to each other, so that gives me the look of a tightly packed water drops on the ground, and that was the composition I was going for. So that's the reason I've put the focal length to 300. And guys, these are the 2 things I wanted to share to you, and I hope you enjoyed the layout session of the project, and thank you for watching this. So guys, that's the final session of the layout. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know if you have any doubts or suggestions about the methods I have shown in this video on the comment box. It would be very helpful for me to improve myself better. If you like this video, give a thumbs up. If you're looking forward to see more contents like this one in the future, subscribe the channel and also share with your friends who are also into lighting. Once again, thank you for watching this video. I hope you guys learned something from it. I'll see you soon in the next part. Till then,